So, hey everybody, I'm Tanya Oak Smith with Higher Ed Solo. We are talking today with not a solo, but with Rob Engelsman, who is Multimedia Content Specialist at Ithaca College. And Rob just worked with his social media team of students, and they completed a really interesting project. And so I thought everybody might like to learn about it and figure out how to implement the thing maybe with their own twist on their own campus. So um, thanks for being here, Rob.
Oh, anytime.
Tell us, this project was a very interesting project. It's called Life at IC, right?
Yeah, we called it Life at IC or IC Life. It was kind of interchangeable.
And how did it, tell us first of all what it was. Explain to us what it was.
So basically, what we did is we bought a bunch of disposable cameras and picked some high traffic areas of campus and then just left the cameras there by themselves for a day. It ended up being like 7 hours just to see what would happen. I've seen this done before, mostly in major cities, Atlanta, New York, Taiwan, cities like that, where people have done this for kind of culture magazines and things like that, where they've tied the camera to a bench and left a little note, said, "Hey, I'll come back later." But the notes were always signed, and it was always just one camera. So I've never seen it the way we've done it, where we ended up using 10 cameras over the span of the 7 hours. We didn't sign the note, so you didn't actually know who the cameras were from, and that concentration and that amount of cameras in a small amount of space, I don't think had been done before.
So, first of all, how did you find film cameras, actual film cameras?
So disposable cameras are actually you can really only buy them online now. It wasn't that bad. It was like we bought 12 for about $50, but it is very hard to find ones that aren't decorated with wedding or bar mitzvah themed coverings. So that was probably the hardest challenge, was to find ones that weren't predetermined to be for those events that disposable cameras are pretty much
We
seen at
talked a
now.
little bit about the inspiration for the photo project.
Mhm.
How did you approach your students and find out if they had interest in it or if they thought it would work on your campus? Um,
So what I do is when I see something I like or that I think could potentially have some sort of play in our realm, I will just give it to the students. I'll show it to them, and I'll just let them kind of talk. So in our meetings, I'll throw up. For this, I showed an example of this project from Atlanta, and without any comment, just kind of showed it to them. I said, "What did you guys think?" And then immediately their heads start clicking and thinking about how they can do things with it. So I kind of go in with some ideas about how we can use things, but I reserve my ideas until they think it through. Because if I have some ideas for something, but I show it to them, and these are generally heavily involved students, they're very smart kids. If they don't make a connection immediately or see it click, then I get more nervous about it being something that we can use effectively or easily. Different factors. One is we're we try to do a really good job here at IC of keeping social part of our overall marketing strategy. So going into recruitment season, we had a series of open houses coming up, and so whatever we can do to show off the campus in a nice way or a fun way, show off life at campus before those open houses, kind of convince people that maybe this is worth visiting. That's good for us. Also, looking at towards alumni and what sorts of things can you do that kind of make them nostalgic and bring them back, whatever emotional pull you can create. And then on top of that, really just connecting the virtual world to the real world. Because it's all well and good to solicit content from people and say, "Hey, tweet your photo with this hashtag," but really giving them the position to create. So instead of being the person in the conversation, kind of deciding what the conversation is going to be and then curating it. The brand manager of Lego, Lego's really good at social media, and their digital social media director for worldwide had a great statement. He said that social media is about creating a stage for your community to perform on. And so I've kind of taken that to heart, and I'm trying to get my students to think more about how can we not create the content all the time, but facilitate the creation of content using people that are already part of our community. And so all those sorts of things kind of came together. This was a pretty fantastic project in terms of hitting all those check marks. When you're looking at something that's attractive to prospective students, you're looking at something that alumni will look back on and remember, and the spaces where the photos were taken, remember being that goofy kid, remember the sites, the landmarks, the perfect weather on the day that we did it, and then also that connecting the virtual to the real world and letting people physically do something that creates that content for you. We plan to place 6 cameras at 6 different locations on campus. 5 of those locations were near the center of campus. One of those locations was in a community center near where some of our upperclassmen live. And the reason we wanted to put a 6th camera up there is because a lot of those students don't necessarily spend as much time in the areas where the other cameras are going to be. And we wanted to try and be as broad with our reach as possible. Very early in the day, that 6th camera walked out on us and never showed up again, and we never replaced it. So we ended up just going with the cameras that were on main campus, which is fine. Losing 1 camera out of 11, I'm happy with that. So what happened was we bought a bunch of Tupperware containers. They literally sat, I have one somewhere, I don't know. We put them in Tupperware containers, just an open lidded Tupperware container. You just left a camera and then a little note. And the note said something like, hey, I'm just leaving this here for the day. Feel free to take pictures with you and your friends. I'll be back later to pick it up. And it was a typed note, and we attached it to the Tupperware container, placed the camera in the containers, and then we had different students place them all at the different locations. So we worked with my strategy team to predetermine those locations, worked with the coverage team to place all those cameras. And then once they were placed, I had all of the people basically report to me that they've been placed by taking a picture of their setup and then sending it in to me. From there, what we did was we had scheduled students to check the different cameras about once every 90 minutes or so. And that was to make sure, see if it was getting used, see if it needed to be replaced, if it had walked, that sort of thing. And what they also were told to do is if there weren't a ton of pictures on the cameras or there were a bunch of people around and there wasn't anyone using it, to be that person that discovers it. Pretend you don't know what's going on. Take other people's pictures with it. And so kind of get that little push over the cliff. What we found was most of the time that push wasn't even needed, and that was pretty fantastic. The morning was pretty slow, but as the day picked up, we relocated a couple cameras that weren't performing very well, and that really was helpful. So having those checks in place was really nice because it allowed us to evaluate what was going on. Now, when a camera was full, and this is something I would have done differently, I was the only person that had empty cameras, so I actually had to be moving around campus and replacing all of the cameras. And so that was the one thing that I would definitely do differently next time, is basically I would have created a place where there was a stash that students could get to without my help, instead of me having to run all over campus, because it became certain points in the day, multiple cameras were getting full at the same times. And so we ended up swapping all of them out. But like I said, we ended up filling about 10 cameras. Now, on the flip side of that, we also wanted to be able to potentially document people discovering and using the cameras. So the production team I mentioned before, we used some cameras. A couple of them are called GoPros. They're very small. They're like this big. You can hide them. You can attach them to helmets and stuff now. We had a couple of those that we put in some bushes and things like that, repositioned as the day went on. And then we had some students just walking around with regular DSLR digital cameras. And what was nice about that is Ithaca is known as a pretty good communication school, so it's not weird to see students walking around with this sort of equipment. So there was no suspicion. And so I have a couple hours of footage, of really great footage of people just discovering the cameras and looking at them and what is this and calling other people over. And so that was more of a Hail Mary to see if we'd get that kind of content, but it ended up being probably the best content we got. Once we collected back all the cameras, we had a little over 200 photos taken, went to develop them. Developing disposable cameras is probably harder than finding disposable cameras now. There's only one place in town that did it. It was an overnight thing. And so we had to develop that. Obviously, not the most savory, some of the photos. We had 4 middle fingers, and then one up a girl's shirt shot. But other than that, it was surprising that that was these out of about 215 photos, only 4 or 5 of them were really, we can't use that. So to be honest, that was a lot more than we expected. The original strategy was to just throw them all up on a Facebook gallery, but we realized that that was just way too many to do that with. So we immediately looked for other options. We wanted to still do a top 30 or so Facebook gallery, but then push people to another place where that content would be held. We ended up deciding on the Tumblr that we ended up using, not because it's a Tumblr, but because we like the way that it displayed the photos. It was very simple. It's very bare bones. You can just sit there and scroll through them. And so that was pretty quickly decided on, once again, by some of my students who worked with me to kind of go through the pros and cons of using different sites, different themes on Tumblr, potentially WordPress. Do we embed it on the Ithaca website? How do we track things? We have Google Analytics connected to the site, so we can track it through that. All those sorts of things too. So happened on a Thursday, had the photos developed by Friday, had the Tumblr done by Monday, and then we launched it on Wednesday. And then the video we launched at the same time as well. My team really loved doing it, and seeing other people get into it and participate, I think, really was a nice thing for my team to see. It was the first project, kind of large-scale project that they did this semester, so it was a great way to kick off the year. And then it also gave them a great sense of what we were looking to accomplish as a team. So they have a good baseline for what sort of creativity we're looking for, what sort of achievement we're looking for, all those sorts of things. On the downside, it set a pretty high bar for them. So keeping them at that standard is something that I'm having a little bit of trouble with, honestly. You know, as you get farther into the semester, students get busy. They don't invest as much time in their extracurriculars potentially. So keeping them at that level has been a little bit of a challenge. In terms of response from people that participated, not knowing that they were participating in a college project, it's been really cool. They're, especially the people that we caught on video doing it, and you know, seeing them do it. And what was nice was, as the day went on, there started to be rumors about whose project this was, what was going on, and only 1 or 2 people guessed it was the college. Most people thought it was a photography student project or something like that. And so that was even cooler to see, because these students thought it was another student's project and were just that willing to help that student and participate with that student. And we have video of students being like, oh, it's some kid's photography project. Here, let's help them out. Let's take a couple pictures and things like that. And really trying to get good shots. Because remember, disposable camera, you get 1 shot. That's it. That's all you get. So their efforts to make sure they were framing correctly or doing things like that was really nice to see. Not too many shots were, oh, I messed up, I'm going to take 3 more efforts at the same one. It was a lot of very nicely attempted photography, which was kind of cool. And then the reaction from people, from students and other people that didn't participate, a lot of them were bummed they either didn't see the cameras or asked if we were going to do it again. I don't know how we could really do it again the same way without people knowing who we were, which I think was part of what made it so nice. So not sure how we would do that, but I've got some people thinking about it. And then the reaction from perspectives was exactly what we wanted. And from alumni, a lot of sharing, lots of tears shed according to Facebook statuses and tweets. And then even outside of that, it got picked up by a few photography blogs and shared around a lot. It made the rounds on Reddit a little bit too, which was kind of cool. So it really took off a little bit and really helped us get our name out there a little bit more, which was nice too. One touch that I thought that I was really happy turned out well is that we're doing our best to use Ithaca student music in our products now. So the song in the video is a student song. And so what we've done is we've collected about 45 songs from different student groups that have given us the rights to use their music if we want to for a social media project. And so that was the first time we'd done that as well. And a lot of people really appreciated that extra touch. And I think that's been a nice little kick for that little band as well.
So you kind of alluded to it, that you were working on a follow-up.
Yeah.
What other projects do you have in the pipeline that may or may not be like this?
We're doing a comprehensive behind the scenes of how our student media is covering election night. So that's going to be next week, next Tuesday night. Our TV station and radio station are both ranked in the top 5 in the country, and they go all out. We've got a couple people, a couple students that are going to be covering the elections from Washington, D.C., some in local elections, and so they cover a little bit of everything. So we're going to have some cameras behind the scenes and capture that and kind of do a, not a story file, we're using a different product called Timeline, which will be pretty cool. Instead of a kind of a vertical timeline of events, it's going to be more of a horizontal as the night goes on, and I'm really excited for that. We've never used that before. It's a GitHub project that's pretty easy to use. And then we're also working on some other minor projects, but in terms of something very similar to this, we haven't landed on what we'd want to do yet. We tend to do something of that scope once-ish a semester from where we're landing right now. In the spring, we did the we took photos of seniors holding big whiteboards, thanking people for making them ready for the future, and that was a huge hit. Very similar, handing students the ability to create the content. So the next time we'll probably do something similar to this wouldn't be until the spring.
I really, really enjoyed. I first of all enjoyed the video because that captured everything along the way to me, and I thought the reaction of individuals was really interesting to the cameras being there. And I wonder if you think it might, how it would work on a campus that wasn't so traditional.
That was more traditional?
Was not so traditional, because I think of Ithaca College as being a very traditional residential kind of campus. So how... I mean, could you give anybody any advice on how to kind of modify this for a not so traditional atmosphere?
There's a lot to be said for continuing that aspect of community as much as possible, and maybe it's not the physical space, but I mean, I know I'm going to go completely against what I was talking about. At Ithaca, we try and create as much in the real space to take to the digital as possible. But if you're in a more expansive zone, or you're an online learning sort of institution or something like that, you can use similar projects, screenshotting, print this out and fill it out and screenshot yourself with it. We've done other projects where it's during breaks. We did a Bring IC on Break contest, which was take a photo wherever you go for spring break, wearing IC clothes, and that's the sort of thing that anybody can do anywhere. Some students just sat in the dorm room and did it, and then others were, in London, in Italy, and crazy stuff like that. So you don't have to be all on one physical plane to create that sense of community. But at the same time, you can't just do it in one fell swoop. And it takes a certain community to not steal all of the cameras, or to not fill it with middle fingers or things like that. So I think that's really, you have to have a good beat on your community and who you're really trying to connect to.
Okay. Well, thanks so much, Rob, for explaining this to us, and we look forward to seeing what the next big thing to come out of Ithaca College is.
Oh, me too.
Thanks. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Tell us about the social media team that you work with, the students that you work with at Ithaca.
Yeah, so I actually started running Ithaca's social media when I was a student. And as I get farther away from being a student, I recognize the need for their input, and especially their knowledge of the haps on campus. So last spring, I put together a team of about 7 students. We put out a call only on social media through Ithaca College's accounts, and pulled together 7 students that were kind of the pilot program, I guess you could say, of a little bit of a social media street team. We meet once a week, talk about social media trends, how things are changing, and then we strategize and talk about coverage of events and what ideas we can use to move forward and to help the accounts really capture that idea of community. We judged the spring a success and kind of expanded that much broader. We had 18 people on my team right now. And it's nice because I don't pay any of them except for in pizza. They get pizza at their meeting once a week, and they throw this down on the resume that they help strategize social media for a college, and they're happy with it. Right now, they're split into three teams. There's a coverage group, which are the ones that will go out to events, take pictures, create the kind of day-to-day content. There's a production team. Those are students that are more trained with video cameras and things like that, and they do a lot more of the technical things that we have. And then there's a strategy group, and they work specifically with me on long-term ideas, looking ahead to the future, helping to formulate some of the strategies for things like this disposable camera project. So all in all, it's a pretty sweet team. There are a lot of great students, and it's a good way to kind of keep us connected to what's going on with the student body and keep those ideas flowing. But at the same time, you don't necessarily want to trust them fully. And I don't know why I was trusted fully when I was a student to run the social media of this college. So whatever content they create, even if it's just a photo from an event, still goes through me before it gets posted to our accounts. I just like being the gatekeeper. I want to know what we're putting out there. And so we have a master calendar. I know what times at night, if it's at night or during the weekend, to expect to be sent content. And then I can have a real-time collaboration. We'll text back and forth with a student who'll send me a picture. I'll say, hey, that's great. We posted something just like this last week. Maybe try a different angle. And so we can collaborate in real time to make sure that the content we're posting is diverse.